So before we jump into all the major transits, we're going to explore everything from Mercury retrograde this month to Jupiter opposite Pluto, Jupiter into Leo, big stuff. The new moon in Cancer. We also have Chiron moving into Taurus for the next 7 years. So a couple announcements. One of them is that I'm going to be offering a Chiron and Taurus masterclass. I wrote my second book about Chiron. It's a big player in my chart. And if it's an archetype that you wanted to study, if you might be in your Chiron return between the ages of, say, 47, 46, and 52, this is a really great class to join because we're going to go through the mythology. We're going to storytell what Chiron and Taurus has been in previous cycles. We're going to talk about how they may show up in the collective and also personally. So we're going to pull up your charts, talk about where Chiron's moving in your chart and what this is going to mean for you. So I hope you can join, and you'll see the link obviously in the chat and in the notes. So the other announcement is we have the Soul Codes TV show that I'm very happy to be hosting, and that's happening over a 6-week period, actually over a 12-week period, but it's 6 classes. And well, they're mini classes and they're mini readings. And so I invite you, if you're interested in dipping your toe in, having a few particular questions about your locational chart, your astrology, your forecast, your human design, or you want to gift that to someone as well, we have these 10-minute readings, and we have a little teaching at the beginning, and this week is going to be astrolocality. So if you've been curious about learning more about that, please join, and you can join for free and just tune in, or you can actually come on and get a mini reading. So that will also be in the notes. So let's dive in. I'm going to share the screen with you. Again, July is just full on, full power, and let's check out the animated chart here. And all right, there we go. So just let me adjust these windows and we'll get going with what looks to be a time for all of us. There's a little bit of this kind of reckoning energy this month. There's a lot that's coming up for us that feels like if we've been sitting on the fence with something, if we've been in between worlds, like we won't be. Like, we are moving forward very quickly out the gate. And so first thing is, I'm recording this on the 29th, so you'll probably see it on the 30th or the first of the month. But we're just coming into this, full moon Capricorn, which makes us all really look at what we're building and our legacy, the amount of work that we're doing, and the ROI of that. And this is where systems thinking and everything in your life, your relationships, your career, all that you're building in your life, you really have to take a serious, sober assessment of how it's functioning, what's working, what's not. And that's an interesting way to begin, sort of, end June and begin July, because right out the gate, we have Mars that has just entered. Go back here. Here you go. Days. Mars has just entered Gemini. And so you're going to see July 1st, right? Look at this. Mars is coming to that exact conjunction with Uranus. Now, this happens about every 2 years. And this is just huge because it's also on the 4th of July. And this is actually a 4th of July transit. Like, when you're hearing the fireworks go off and it's like shocking at times, or, the first one happens, you didn't know that was coming. And it just doesn't stop, right? And it gets annoying, it gets crazy, you start to feel reactive, you're like combustible yourself. And that's this transit. This transit is very extreme and eccentric and wild and uncertain, and we can go in a million directions at once. Also, because Mars is in Gemini now. So this can scatter our mental energy. Now, it can get us excited, and this is the best way to use this. It's like, I want to have a mental breakthrough, and I'm going to dive into territory I never have. It could also be technologically, I want to do something that feels really interesting or unique. Maybe you're using AI in exciting ways, and that can be a positive, powerful way for you to work with this. Maybe you have a strong reaction with the AI or any other tech at this time. That could also be because of Mercury retrograde. So this is very important. We have to put these together with this forecast, because the ruler of this Mars-Uranus conjunction is Mercury, and Mercury's in Cancer retrograde. And it makes me think that this is a cycle, Mars-Uranus here, just as the first week of July, where we have to be very careful with the words that we're using, and to not, be defensive, pushy, um, aggressive, reactive. Mars in Gemini speaks very quickly often and very reactively. It's very intelligent. But when it comes to that Uranus energy, then there's almost like anxiety or nervousness or radical energy that then infuses like our drives and desires. And it can affect us on very personal and intimate levels, because Mercury is in Cancer, which again connects to the family or those close to us, or it could be things about the home that we are really needing to reflect on. So again, putting these together, Mars Uranus, go in the direction of that which liberates you, which awakens you, um, which is something new or novel. May even be like, I mean, this is a trine to Pluto as well. So look at this, Mars Uranus trine Pluto. And I also think if we, let's see, if we pull this forward, yeah, look at what's happening. Mars is also moving into a trine with Juno. And there's this Juno-Pluto conjunction too. Now, Juno is the asteroid of sacred partnership, and she relates to fairness and, equal relating, like conditions on relationship, what's balanced in relationship. And she's also retrograde, coming back to meet Pluto. This is also a significant transit this month. You see her, let's just take her forward. She's right here, and that Juno-Pluto will be July 21st, which happens to be when Jupiter is opposite Juno and Pluto. So let's come back to that, and let's start off with the trine, because what I like about this, Juno's very significant because her transits to her and from her do affect our most intimate bonds, soul contracts, sacred relationships. I've studied Juno my whole career, and one of the most important, if you've never studied Juno in your, if you have a romantic partnership, or you want to look back, this is one of the things I love working with clients, because Juno shows us this level of ideal fairness in relationship and what it looks like. Now, she's in Aquarius, and we want to open the world a bit. We want to, in our relationships, we want to be more experimental, and we want to study the relationship as we're in it, and we want new possibilities, new pattern recognition. Aquarius is very good at that, applying astrology and human design. This is what I love doing in relationships. This could be a great time to study this in your charts, things like your composite chart in human design or astrology. This will come up later in the month as Venus squares Uranus, one of our big transits of the month. And I will show you a list of these major transits too at the end. So stay tuned for that. But I'm looking at this, by the end of the first week of July, where Mars is trining. He's been trining Pluto and trining Juno. And maybe with, this, we can bring in very experimental, sexual practices, intimacy practices, tantra, Taoist practices, which can really take us to another level, bringing more ritual to our relationship, having more fun. I mean, Mars in Gemini loves to have fun in relationship. Now, there's something else interesting, right? Venus is in Leo as we start the month. If we're talking about the sacred masculine and feminine and what they're doing each month, this is important. What is the god wanting, and what's his love language, and what's the goddess's love languages? Well, at the beginning here, Venus is still in Leo, and she's really wants to be seen and recognized, and playful and creative. Fits kind of well with Mars and Gemini. Mars in Gemini is a very open sign. Like, it's very experimental. It's interested in maybe multiple partners or just being curious about a lot of things. So if you're in a monogamous relationship, read together, flirt together more. Be like teenagers together. Like, that's a very Gemini thing. Make innuendos with each other. And I think that this window right here, Mars and Uranus conjunct and square Pluto, or sorry, trine Pluto and Juno, it's a really cool opportunity um, to go deep. Mars Pluto trine. It's not a square, and it allows us to access the unconscious, the shadow. But maybe this is also doing things like shibari, right? Which is like, I have to let go of control, and you can dominate me. Um, Mars Pluto likes passion. And so this could be a really passionate transit. And since it's a trine, I don't I think it's positive. But remember that Mars is conjunct Uranus. So one word said the wrong way could trigger something. So we have to really create emotional safety. And that's what's coming up with this Mercury retrograde in Cancer. That we have this this will be with us a lot of the month. Mercury starts his retrograde um, right at the end of June to 29th. And it's, typically a 3-week cycle. So we won't see Mercury go direct until July 23rd. And so whatever area of your life Cancer is in, Mercury is asking you to reflect, to assimilate information and ideas you've been learning there for the last 3 months. He's asking you to renew some of the themes of that area of your chart. Um, and to reinvigorate it mentally. But to really think back over the last 3 months and maybe to plan the next 3 months. That's the best way of working with retrogrades. I think of it's a good time to do readings and to get a check in that way. It's a good time to, especially in Cancer, to look at what's making me feel safe, secure, and how is my home space? How is my nest? How is my inner self? And this could be a good time, especially as Mercury and the Sun come closer together and around the Cazimi middle of the month, where we want to do a lot of writing, and especially reflective writing. I do a lot of memoir writing, personal essays, lyrical types of poetry and essays. Um, this could be a really important time. Using photography to kind of write stories through, trips you've been on, what happened, what did you learn? I would say that's one of the great ways you could work with this Mercury retrograde. Um, it does get, as we go through the month, it will get a bit challenging with the Saturn, the Mercury Saturn, the Sun square Saturn. So we'll look at that, but let's make sure we got this down, right? Mars Uranus starts the month, 4th of July, 250th anniversary of the US. Um, there may be some craziness. The last time this happened was when Donald Trump, the assassination took place. Um, this is very strong in his chart. We might see some big energies with this. Some crazy news could come out. Maybe this is something again with warlike energies. But there's possibilities of real breakthrough. But also, as Jupiter comes in now in Leo for the next year, right? Jupiter enters Leo, and he's going to be there until next July. And so this is a big transit, right? This is a year-long transit, and you'll see Jupiter opposite Pluto. And we want to live bigger when Jupiter's in Leo. We want to take creative risks. We want to lead. We want to be speaker. This is something I'm working with my clients with. If you're coaching, if you're an entrepreneur of any kind, you need to find your audience now. If you're a creator, if you're an artist, if you're being shy, this is not the time. Like, Jupiter and Leo wants us to jump out and share, be joyous, be experimental, be playful. Jupiter and Leo is the child, right? Like, now that can be a child who is too selfish, right? too self-focused, maybe even arrogant or egocentric. And we can see that get really quite crazy or over the top when Jupiter is opposite Pluto. Um, this is something I talked a lot more in my recent class about, but Jupiter opposite Pluto, it enlarges all of the shadow pieces potentially. Now, this could also mean that we see big business, big tech, big government, big egos in all those realms out of control, right? Like, and probably we're going to see news related to that. Um, huge investments will be happening. Maybe major financial shifts going on with this. Big gambling energy. You know, Jupiter and Leo is gambling. Um, and we might feel like we're gambling with a lot of things during this next year. And there is enhanced kind of volatility. Um, so I think that Jupiter and Pluto, the potential here on the high side is for us to transform our relationship to inspired creativity and also to bringing wisdom into our leadership, um, how we perform, how we step onto a stage, and bring more spiritual energy to that process, but also more playful energy. And I think you're going to see a lot of interesting entertainment news, and probably over this year, you know, with the tech, entertainment's just going to go to a different level. You know, maybe there's more immersive, more interactive, more choose your own adventure, even things like on Netflix or, you know, in cinema or something like that. But you also might see some downfalls. I know, like, without going too deep into this, like, there's been huge backlash against the Disclosure Day movie from Steven Spielberg. He is a Pluto and Leo generation person, and, you know, we wonder there's so many weird things about what's going on with that, where it was just such a disappointing film for so many people, including myself, and didn't disclose anything. It was a terribly plotted movie, everything like but, yes, that's my opinion, but, it's a lot of people's opinions. But we're seeing a lot of backlash even before it comes out of Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, because there's no Greek actors. Even the Greek government has issued like a kind of complaint about this, like, you know, like not honoring the we're living culture, you know. And there's a lot of backlash around again those who have a lot of power in the creative realms, who have a lot of influence, and what they're doing with that. And then again, it comes back to like, well, who's calling the shots? Who's running the show? And what are the agendas? And this transit brings this kind of question up. What are the agendas? You know, and who are making those decisions? Um, but for the most of us, we have to look at empowering ourselves during this time as creators, as influencers. And I know, like with YouTube, something that I'm looking to build out this year is more of a presence around astrocartography, locational astrology, and really sharing my own stories of travel around the world and living it. Like I live this language, and you know, storytelling, our personal storytelling, and being consistent with that. That's actually what most of the YouTube gurus are saying now. That YouTube is rewarding you for really being yourself and you know, consistently showing up with like who you're serving, like the transformation you're giving to people, whatever it is. So it doesn't have to be like a larger than life thing. It can be simple, but it's that you're showing up doing it. So that's going to be this Jupiter Leo, you know. um there's obviously going to be more to say with that as we go through the year, but it's a great place, and I think it will bring a lot of fun to many of our lives. As we go into the month further, we're going to look at the 14th as the new moon in Cancer. And this new moon, let's bring it forward a couple of hours here. Oh, that's gotta get up. Yeah, so it's coming right there on the 14th, sort of, yeah, early day in the US, let's say. But we got a conjunction with Mercury, Mercury who is retrograde. And um, there's going to be, I think, again, a lot of emotional energy that we're going to have to be very intentional with. So, where is that soft spot, like in our belly that brings down the nervous system so it can be tended? Let's say one of the things we want to intend with this new moon and this whole month, this Cancer month, especially with Mercury retrograde, is how do I self-regulate? How do I calibrate and um, really connect with emotional intelligence? Yeah, and what are my tactics and strategies? Um, do I connect with a sage voice? Do I connect with God, with spirit? Um, and maybe it's the garden. I need to go ground. Um, and this transit of Mercury retrograde in Cancer and this new moon is definitely gonna bring up issues for ourselves related to our family of origin, our family that we may have, children, etc. And we want to look at also our potentials as healers, as nurturers, as providers, as caregivers, giving and receiving that care and making sure to give enough self care in this process. So this is going to be the new moon in Cancer. Um, if we kind of back this up, I want to show you that a few days before this, because I don't want to forget this transit. So this is like the Sun squaring Saturn. This month it's got a good 5 days of strong Sun square Saturn, and so it's kind of like the 4th to the 8th. And we can't feel some heavy responsibilities around this. There's more duties, the tension between maybe some risk taking and the responsibility around that Saturn and Aries, and sort of the familiar and the comfort of Sun and Cancer. Like Sun and Cancer, like this is good. I I got my things, my food, my family, my comforts. My yard. But then like, oh, I want to travel. I want to take a trip. I want to go somewhere. I want to dive into some entrepreneurial adventure. Or there's a little tension going on here, and we do have to make sure that we fulfill on our duties, and we might look at some commitments that we want to be making, and what it's going to require to follow through. And if that's in personal relationships or wherever that Cancer section and Aries sections are of your chart, they come into a little bit of a battleground there. And so we want to look at that as we uh, look at July 4th to 10th. So if we come back to the middle of the month, then we're going to see, we had talked about Jupiter opposite Pluto. That's a big one coming in. But look at Venus right here, July 12th. So right about that new moon, we also have under that new moon, Venus is going to be squaring Uranus. And this is a very important transit because it brings tension between the goddess of love, who is now in Virgo, who actually, in the days before this new moon, she crosses the South Node. Now, I think this is something we really need to pay attention to because Venus is coming to a point of draining or reducing energies. That's the South Node. It's karmic completion. Now, this suggests that let's say this week of the 9th to the 15th, 16th, Venus on the South Node definitely can bring in past life connections, past life patterns in relationship, karmic relationships here, right? Now, like former lovers could come in. And we have to be very attentive to this. We have to be very attuned to how we approach these relationships in a more devotional, sacred, um, spiritual type of way, Virgo. But we also have to recognize that Virgo is not a sign that Venus is super comfortable in because she doesn't get to be sort of exalted and romantic in the same way, kind of Pisces, right? Let's say the opposite sign where she's in her exaltation, or just like very social, like very like Libra, right? Or very just uber sensual in Taurus, right? Venus in Virgo is like, we got responsibilities, we got to take care of the details. Often it's about improvements, right? We're more analytical. It's ruled by Mercury. So Venus in Virgo on the South Node, being careful to not be overly critical to the point of like, God, it's just not fun hanging out with you, you know? Um, and think about more devotional practices you can share together, yoga practices, meditation, tantric rituals, being in nature again. The garden can be very good for this, sharing herbs and essences and eating really well and eating very methodically, maybe one bite at a time, um, which is a very tantric practice. But Venus square Uranus, trying those types of things, if you're not doing them, can be great. You want to have something experimental in your relationship, but this could also bring some breaks, some disruptions, some wild, crazy uncertainty or surprises in relationship. And also because a few days later, we're looking at this Venus Mars square. It's like kind of hovering a lot of the month. It comes in more here, July 27th. Now there's a lot of chemical reaction going on, mutable signs. We can be very changeable in our relationship, but we have to be very careful. There's a lot of passion, but it can be very combustible. So you want to be like intentional, during this time, be learning together, both Mercury ruled signs, um, good time to study together and, but be sensitive to being very reactive with each other. Um, if you come back here, yeah, so just tuning in to that, Venus is in Virgo a lot of the month. Mercury is stationing direct on the 23rd. And we've talked about this, sort of the exact Jupiter Pluto comes in days before that. So it's kind of building all month. There's definitely some hot energy going on here. Um, yeah, I wonder, something interesting is going on with health collectively. Hygeia is going to cross the sun and Jupiter, be opposite Pluto. She's an asteroid related to health. I work with her in my medical astrology readings. And so there's maybe something in the news of health with this coming out. Hopefully it's nothing around viruses or anything like that, but this is something. Publicity, Jupiter rules that. And, you know, I think there's something going on here. So let's tune into that as the month unfolds. And we have a big shift coming in at the end of the month. We have a full moon right here in Leo, sorry, in Aquarius. And this marks, the sun will move into Leo as it does every year around July 22nd, bringing that playfulness. Now, look at this Sun Jupiter conjunction. This is a big full moon because it's also the Jupiter Pluto opposition. So, everything we talked about, this is whatever's happening the last days. So, the July 29th, it's big, it's large, it's larger than life, it's grand. And this might be, if it doesn't happen around 4th of July, there may be something going on with protests in the world. Maybe this is also more, the extreme weather. This does seem to suggest something with the collective, the full moon in Aquarius, in a big, intense, transformational way. We talked about the Juno and partnerships, soul contracts, intimate bonds, and Jupiter's just enlarging everything. Now, this can be a great time for like a festival, right? And that kind of energy for teaching, for being around spiritual community, and having great awakenings. But it could be in the collective something quite intense. And Chiron, which we mentioned at the beginning, at the first degrees of Taurus, is going to square this full moon. And so I do think that this is bringing up for us all of our journeys as wounded healers and really needing to tend to that. So this can be receiving coaching, mentorship, healing. It can also be using the earth to heal ourselves. And it can be stepping into that role in a much bigger Jupiter, larger way, and having a stage for that, right? And this is what I love to help clients with. And so if you are stepping onto a bigger stage and you're wanting support with that, or you're making a shift, a pivot, being more entrepreneurial, um, let's talk more. We can do the Unleash Your Genius strategy session. You can join the Chiron and Taurus call. We can look at Chiron in your chart. But it's a huge month for shifts. And I think a lot of us may be moving in a different direction that feels more authentic, more emotionally safe and secure, and, really honoring our uniqueness, right? All that Uranian energy. So I hope this is helpful to you. I hope to see you on Soul Codes this week, Chiron and Taurus next week, and any other possible work we might do in the future. Stay creative, stay connected with nature, and we'll chat with you next month. Take care.